Whenever there's a tragedy, you think, how could this have happened?
I had faith in all of my leaders on September 10th that they were doing the best jobs that they could to protect the lives of my loved ones, my friends, my countrymen.
I didn't understand that I needed to look at the bigger picture. I've turned into a very disenchanted, fully awake, no longer naive person who's extremely driven.
Mindy Kleinberg, Patty Casaza, Lori Van Auken, Kristen Breitweiser. These women banded together after their husbands were killed, and now they're leading a campaign to find out exactly how did 9/11 happen.
A lot of people think, but we already know what happened on 9/11. It's been all over the news. And besides, Congress just released this investigative report about it a couple months ago. But this country has barely begun to learn the truth about 9/11. That's what the women say. And they want to make sure we eventually hear it.
Leaders in Congress said, don't worry, we're going to investigate 9/11. So the women were stunned when President Bush convinced Congress to back off. He reportedly told congressional leaders that a sweeping investigation might distract from the government's war on terrorism. And that's when the women got together and said, let's organize a protest in Washington.
We went to Home Depot because we knew we needed signs.
Not long after that, the White House called, and the president's aides said they wanted to talk. In fact, the New Jersey women and a handful of other survivors had a series of meetings at the White House. Some were reportedly rather heated, but in the end, President Bush changed his position, and Congress agreed to launch a new independent commission to investigate 9/11. They compared what different officials said and began to find discrepancies and contradictions. For instance, government officials say they can't establish an exact timeline for the events on 9/11. They can't even confirm exactly what time each plane was hijacked or exactly what time they learned that the planes were hijacked.
I sat in that hearing, and a lieutenant colonel at NORAD is saying that, the times in the logbook that we have written down might not be the exact time that the event happened. It could have just been when the person went and logged it in. And I'm thinking, this is the military. Aren't these the guys that say 0800 and, have everything to the second? And, is that not what we know about them? And now you have this catastrophic event, and you got to call in about a hijacking, and it didn't get logged at the exact time. I mean, it doesn't make common sense.
On the morning of September 11th, we had 4 planes drastically off their flight paths, transponders disconnected, and the FAA procedure and protocol to notify NORAD and for NORAD to scramble fighter jets were not followed. And it wasn't like they all happened in the course of an hour. What I think is very frustrating is looking back when I speak to people, they say, well, it happened in such a short span of time. It did not happen. It happened over the course of 2 hours. You're telling me over the course of 2 hours, Andrews Air Force Base in the Washington, D.C. area, which houses F-16s, which fly cover for Air Force One, could not get a plane up in the air to cover the Pentagon? Because of our work being reported in the papers, we had people reaching out to us. We met with an air traffic controller from Newark who flat out said to us, look, I don't know what happened. All he could tell us was that the FBI showed up, took all of their files, all of their recordings, and walked out.
The way Breitweiser tells the story, Mueller started showing them a PowerPoint presentation. She cut to the chase.
And we said, Director Mueller, you are our chief investigator. We have information that you have come in and taken these files, taken these recordings. We'd like to know what you learned from them. We'd like to know where you are in your investigation.
So you, all 4 of you and other family members, are meeting with the director of the FBI?
Right.
And were you, you're sounding very tough and forceful right now, were you really talking to the FBI director like this?
Yes. So then I'm like, okay, fine, I'll give you that. I'll give you that you couldn't have hit every flight school. I'm like, okay, fine. Well, how is it that if there's thousands of flight schools and you could never have found them, how is it that you went to Embry-Riddle Flight School in Daytona Beach, Florida, hours after the attacks? If there's thousands of flight schools, how did you just happen to go to that one exact perfect school that some of the hijackers went to. How'd you know to go to that school? And he just looked at me and goes, we got lucky.
1995, intelligence officials learned that al-Qaeda planned to crash a plane into CIA headquarters. In 1998, they got warnings that terrorists planned to crash a plane into the World Trade Center. In the spring of 2000, the CIA knew that an al-Qaeda operative had moved from Malaysia to California and that another had a visa to come to the United States. Those two would later hijack the plane that crashed into the Pentagon. And just a month before the 9/11 attacks, President Bush himself learned at a briefing that al-Qaeda might have plans to hijack commercial airliners.
If you watch the televised press reports, and this is something that also angered us early on, is you have Condoleezza Rice saying we could never have anticipated planes being used as bombs.
I don't think anybody could have predicted that these people would take an airplane and slam it into the World Trade Center, take another one and slam it into the Pentagon.
If you reach a certain level in the government or in private industry or anywhere, incompetence should not fly. If you are incompetent in any facet of your job, you should no longer be there. And I don't understand why that feeling is not passed on in Washington. I don't understand how George Tenet could still have his job. I don't understand how Robert Mueller could still have his job. I don't understand how Condoleezza Rice could still have her job.
Why?
Why? Because they completely and utterly failed.
The New Jersey women say they're getting skeptical that the 9/11 Commission can do its job. The Commission is supposed to dig up all the facts, but the Commission's chairman has complained publicly that Bush administration officials aren't cooperating. They're not turning over key documents. The White House won't let the Commission interview government employees unless there's a minder in the room. Meanwhile, the women keep asking more questions that they want the Commission to resolve.
I thought democracy just worked. And I learned that it doesn't go like that. That if you want to live in this great country of ours with our fabulous democracy and our Constitution and, you know, our different rights, freedom of speech and all the things that we take for granted, you have to fight for those things.